Heavenly Father, as we mark the 40th anniversary of Women at LaSalle and explore women's role in business, we ask for your guidance. Bless our panelists with wisdom as they share their experiences. May our hearts be open to learn from the experiences shared by them, and may their stories inspire us to strive for excellence in all our endeavors. Guide our discussion, unite us in purpose, and may this time together be filled with insight and understanding. In your holy name we pray. St. John Baptist de LaSalle, pray for us. Live Jesus in our hearts forever. All right, so as hopefully you've all noticed from the banners on the front of the school and throughout our campus, 2024 is a really, really important year in our history. We celebrate 40 years of coeducation here at LaSalle. Today, we will be highlighting LaSalle alumni who hold various positions in the field of education. Teaching and education are at the core of our LaSallian mission, and we hope that you take away valuable insights from this panel and learn about each of their paths, from their time as a student here, just like you, to present day. Like you, they too were once young students beginning to explore and consider what they might want to pursue in life. And more importantly, how they might continue the tradition of service via education. Today's moderator is a really, really familiar face to all of you. So I will turn it over to Mrs. McLean, who will get us started. Thank you.
And a little about your roles and responsibilities in your current position.
So my name is Kristen Ward. I graduated in 1990. Currently, I am an administrator at Cranston High School East, but I basically have had the opportunity to have a bunch of different roles within education. My favorite job is I was an ESL teacher, so I was a teacher of students who didn't speak English in Central Falls, Rhode Island, for a few years, and then I've been an elementary principal, a middle school assistant principal, and a district administrator. So I've had the opportunity to be around students K through 12.
Thank you.
I was gonna say good morning, but it's good afternoon.
Yeah.
Good morning, still. My name is Claire Arnold. I am the assistant superintendent of Northern Brookfield Schools here in Rhode Island. I graduated from LaSalle in 1988, so the 1984 year I was the first class of freshmen at LaSalle, a co-ed class of freshmen. I went to St. Augustine's, I lived around a corner, I walked to school, and it's great to be back. So I graduated from LaSalle in 1988, I went to Salle Regina University and got a elementary and special education major, and from there I taught in 4 different states, 6 different school districts. My husband was military, so we traveled around, and my career path went from teacher to assistant principal to curriculum director, and currently the assistant superintendent. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you, Claire.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Sue Adams. I graduated in the class of 1997, and so my background, I'm actually a clinical psychologist, but when I was in graduate school, I was able to teach a class and realized that I really loved teaching. And so then I decided to make the shift into a faculty role at the University of Rhode Island. So I am a professor in human development and family science at URI. I teach undergrad students, graduate students at URI, and I also do research. And as a licensed psychologist, I also have a private practice, and I see clients. We specialize in anxiety disorders and OCD. So I do a lot of different things, and then in the last 6 years, I've transferred more into leadership roles. So I've been a department chair, an interim associate dean. So really looking at all of these areas of education from these different lenses and being able to bring them all together in a way that is really unique and I think helpful for students.
Thank you, Sue. And those of you who don't know me, I'm Mrs. McLean, and I graduated from LaSalle in 2003. And after graduating, I went to Providence College, and then I came right back here after that and started teaching. So we've all had very varied journeys after leaving LaSalle, and many elements
very fortunate that I come from a family of teachers. So I always kind of knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do or who I wanted to teach. And my freshman English teacher, Mr. Larkin, who's no longer here anymore, he's retired, made quite an impression on me when we started reading Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. So I did not necessarily have a particular love of Shakespeare at the time, but I really enjoyed the way that he taught it, the way I understood it. And then back then, when you were a senior, you got to choose different electives. So at that time, I saw that he was teaching a class on Shakespeare. So I took a Shakespeare class for one of my senior English credits. And he really just made me fall in love with Shakespeare and the themes that actually still apply today in terms of family strife, like in Romeo and Juliet, or Othello, interracial relationships, and I just really enjoy it. So when I went to Rhode Island College, I was an elementary education major, but I also double majored in English. And when you're an English major, you need to pick like a focus. And I picked the Shakespearean period. So he did actually really influence my path, and part of that love of reading has really helped me to influence me working with the students that, when I was teaching them to speak English and love literature, to love different kinds of genres. So he definitely did make an influence on me.
I didn't know I was going into education when I had graduated, and I think it's a little different now, and typically seniors do have more of an idea what they're going to do. But when I think back to my experiences at LaSalle, I was thinking about one of the service learning projects that I did, and I don't know if we still do service learning projects, but I'd gone into a nursing home and did a project, and I knew it didn't necessarily resonate with me that I wanted to go into a nursing field or a medical field, but I did know that I wanted to go into some type of service. And so when I was in college, I was thinking maybe social work or psychology or education or something of that nature. And I started taking a variety of classes freshman year, and education just resonated and felt right, or the right fit for me. But I think having the service learning project was really important to have just a variety of experiences. And so you get to learn what you want, or something that was a great experience, but it's not necessarily something you'll go into.
Right. So thinking back over my time at LaSalle, I think that one of the strengths that you have here are just excellent teachers across the board. I think that has been the case for decades, and you all, I'm sure, have people who resonate with you as excellent educators. For me, Mrs. Romani, I think she was here or is here, she's one. Mrs. Starkey, who taught science, and Miss Hayes, who did dance company. For me, I feel like they always showed up in the classroom with so much energy and enthusiasm, and that really kind of, I think, informed the way that I try to show up for my students. I think what you bring into the classroom is so important in terms of the energy and the openness to learning, and I think what I was able to observe here at LaSalle with my own teachers has just been so formative in what I bring to my own professional life.
Thank you. I think she went and hid because she knew you might talk about her. Mrs. Romani was one of my favorites here as well. There are many teachers who are still here, who were here when we were here, and but Claire, you were talking about the Christian service program, which we still have, and that kind of leads us into our next question. So posted at some of the entrances of the school grounds is a quote that reads, "Enter to learn, lead to serve." How do you believe LaSalle prepared you to serve in the world of education? Claire, do you want to start us?
Well, I think that the service learning project is actually a perfect example for that question. I probably should have saved it, but it is a perfect example, and I think it's not just LaSalle, but being Christians and being Catholics that we serve, and service. I'll say 10 times out of 10 that you're doing it for others, but you always get more in return. And in your journey in life, anytime you give, you certainly will get back. And I would think in my experience right now as a leader in a school department, I serve my employees, I serve our faculty. What resources do they need to serving community. And, you know, when I think of times, good times and bad, right, in my community, I was CCD or faith formation teacher for about 10 years. And it's not just giving, but the relationships that came from that, and the community that came from that, I've received so much more. So I think that it all stems from my Catholic education at St. Augustine's and LaSalle Service.
Yeah, in terms of service, I think for all of us, we are in education and human service fields, and so that is so much a part of who we just are as people. I echo the sentiment about the Christian Service Project, and I remember doing mine. I was in a preschool classroom, and I think what's really just so neat to look at that over time is that work that I was doing in the preschool classroom. I knew I wanted to work with children, and then I kind of transitioned my whole career, and I still do work with that population. I think having the ability to be able to try new things and to really think for yourself, what am I interested in? And then having a school that allows you to explore those interests is just really unique for your own professional development. And then the other thing I'm thinking in terms of service is just going back to the teachers that I was talking about before, and all of the teachers that you have, there's so much unseen and invisible service that they do for all of you. So the clubs and making sure you have opportunities and connections with people to be able to do the things out in the world that you want to do. I think that is such a good example of service that they do to you, because they want you to excel and they just want you to be kind of have the most opportunities that you can as you move forward. So, you know, I think all around there's so many good examples at LaSalle of serving in different ways.
I think another example of that too that we have, that, you know, I had as a student as well, and we're lucky to have, again, we have the Christian brothers here who live a life of service to education. I was blessed to have Brother Paul, who was one of the best teachers I ever had too, and just the dedication that they have to the mission of the school, and seeing that lived out as an example really is inspiring too.
So, just at the risk of being redundant, I mean, certainly the staff here and the community that was built when I was here made me want to return. So, and I did, I was a co-chair for many years. I still do occasionally go back and help when I'm asked to, but it's that sense of community that has continued here, that has kind of always called me back. I mean, the greatest example of that is the fact that I sent both of my children here. If I did not believe in that, I wouldn't have done it. So I have a daughter who's a senior, and then I have a daughter who graduated 3 years ago and is currently at Providence College. She didn't go very far, she went right down the road. But the teachers and the staff members here that continue to give to the community, build that sense of community here, that kind of sucks us back in, you know, hence why I'm here today. You know, the people that I know that have called and said, okay, can you come and talk about your experience at LaSalle and service? And this is a prime example of how it continues in that sense of community that LaSalle is very unique in having. So
we have sophomores in front of us today. They're not quite sure maybe what they're going to be doing with their lives or what they want to go into, but some of them might be thinking about education. So what advice would you have for students hoping to work as an educator? Maybe, Sue, do you want to start this one?
Sure. So my advice, I think, extends beyond education, but I think really it's about figuring out why you want to do the job, why you want to go into the profession, why you want to work with that specific population of people, and having that answer in your mind as a way to ground you. Because it doesn't matter what you go into, if it's education, social work, business, there's always going to be challenges to it. There are always going to be days where you're like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know if this is what I want, because there's a lot of adversity and things are changing really, really quickly. So being able to really go back to why am I doing this thing? Why is it important to me? And having that as the answer that you have when you're sitting there and you're like, wow, this is so hard right now. I need to remind myself why I'm doing the job that I'm doing. And I think when thinking about the why, it's not just like, if I asked you, why do you want to become an educator? You know, because I want to help people or I want to teach. That's a fine answer, but why do you want to do that? and then asking yourself that question to really get to the point where you can be able to say, I think this is important because I have a teacher who basically changed the way that I felt about being in a classroom, and they changed my life. Like, you need to get to that level of understanding why this thing is important to you, and just keep that in your mind as you move through your career.
Thank you, that's great advice.
Yeah, I'd also say trust the journey, because sometimes you think you want one thing, and then life takes you in a completely different direction. So when I graduated from Rick, as I said, I was elementary education, English major, and I couldn't get a job, 'cause at that time there were tons and tons of elementary teachers. So I went and I applied, well actually I went and got certified in other things to try to make myself more marketable. I became a middle school English teacher, I became a history teacher, and then one day I got a call from a school that said, we want you to be an ESL teacher. And I said, okay, what's that? Because desperation is definitely a motivating factor. And so the joke in my family is that I didn't know how to spell ESL when I started, but yet I was the district administrator for Cranston Public Schools for 14 years. And I developed the program and I hired the staff. So if you had said to me when I was in high school, well, what do you think you want to be? I probably said, oh, I probably want to be a teacher. When you asked me when I was in college what I wanted to be, well, I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. And now I'm at a high school. So I think you have to trust the journey and sometimes know that doors are going to open, windows are going to open that you never actually saw coming, but you need to trust the journey because you never know when you're going to end up. And it's been definitely an interesting journey for me, but it's one that I've loved, and I've loved every school that I've been at and every level that I've been at. But if I kept my focus so thin to just say, oh, I want to be an elementary teacher, I wouldn't have gotten all the different experiences that I have today. So my clip note version would be, which I probably don't know what those are anymore, but
I think they do like lit charts.
yeah, Spark Notes is trust the journey as it unfolds.
And I think that taking advantage of opportunities, but also making opportunities for yourself. If you're getting a part-time job and you think you might be interested in education, being a camp counselor over the summer, it could be a lifeguard, or it could be babysitting jobs or coaching. I feel like my journey as an educator stemmed from a lot of that. I was a coach, I was a camp counselor, I was a babysitter. I didn't know I was preparing myself for a career in education, but I leaned in on all of those experiences when I went into education. And so taking advantage of opportunities and seeking out opportunities.
Thank you. So we have find your why, seizing opportunities, and trusting the journey. And to that, I just add for all of you that continue to find joy and always have empathy in everything you do. And an example I have of that, Brother Paul, so he was a teacher here for a long time, he always said, if you're a teacher and you can't enjoy a snow day, that means you should stop teaching, because you've lost your empathy and understanding of what it means to be a student. You don't have that joy anymore. We all know we love snow days. So Claire, you talked a little bit about opportunity, but we're curious, what challenges and or opportunities do you currently see in the world of education?
So when I look at the big picture of education, I think that one of the challenges right now is the teacher shortage. And there's a teacher shortage for a variety of reasons, and some stems from COVID. A lot of folks may be retired early or left education during COVID. We also have baby boomers that are retiring. We also have less people students going into education for a variety of reasons, but some of that could be public perception over the years. And another reason could be that young people don't necessarily think that education has a lot of room for advancement. And so when I think that those are the challenges with the teacher shortage, especially in high need areas and certifications, I also think that poses a lot of opportunity. And so for young people, I would say that there is room for advancement, and really it's up to you what you're interested in. And so, in my district, I think, we have a special education director, and we have a technology director, and curriculum director, and our superintendent. We have our teachers who are department heads, our team leaders, and there's many leadership opportunities. You can work for the State Department of Education. And so there is quite a bit of room for advancement, and I think that's really important for young people to know. They think maybe, oh, I'll be a teacher or a nurse or whatever you go into, there's always more opportunities there. And so there's those challenges, but also opportunities, because so many folks have left the profession that when you go into it, you will be able to move through the system and take advantage of the opportunities that are there.
All right, so for me, I think in terms of challenges and opportunities, I would answer this more from a higher education lens, because that's where I kind of live. But I think that there's a lot of pressure on high schoolers to decide what they want to do and to go down a career trajectory. And you know, I know not everybody is going to choose a college path, but I think the biggest thing I would say is feel like you can take more time in college to really explore. So if you're going into engineering or you're going into pharmacy, yes, you probably did have to opt in and apply to those programs, and that's going to be how you get into your university. There are a lot of other students, though, who you may not know, and that is the norm. And I would say actually the majority of our students come in declaring one major and then they switch to another one, because the beauty of college, and especially in that freshman year, is that you can try a lot of different classes in a lot of different disciplines you didn't even know existed before. And that's how students really find, like, oh wow, there's this class in sociology and criminal justice that I never knew that was a thing that I could do, and I actually think I want to change my major over to that. And what we're also seeing at the college level is that colleges have done a much better job at streamlining gen eds and classes. So students are getting through the curriculum really quickly, and then often having their senior year and they have to kind of fill in some classes to take. So I'm saying take that freshman year, that first year, take your time, try new things, and it might ignite a passion. And even if you're staying in the major you're declared, you can minor, there might be a certificate, there might be all of these other things that you can do to bolster up your particular area of expertise that's going to be marketable on the, you know, as you graduate. So take your time.
And I think finally one of the largest challenges that I see is that the respect that teachers have lost over the years. And when you speak to kids about, well, do you want to be a teacher? They're like, oh no, I don't want to do that. And when you ask them why, they'll be like, well, I don't want to deal with kids. And so I encourage you to be the student that you would want to be. But I do think it came back a little bit during COVID when teachers had to turn everything on their head, and all of a sudden we're doing online school and breakout rooms and all that, which we've never even envisioned 5 or 6 years ago. But I think getting back to the fact that, you know, teachers are teachers because they do want to serve students, families, and communities, and kind of keeping that in the background of everything that we do, because you certainly aren't becoming a teacher to be a millionaire. So I think we need to realize that, you know, teachers' efforts are that of service, and making sure that we keep that at the forefront.
Thank you. So we're all in education now, but we were once students like you, and we watched you guys walking in, and I watched some of you circle back and try to sit with your friends. But that's what we would have done too. So the next question is about friendship. And what role does friendship play in your LaSalle experience? Claire, do you want to start us off?
It's lots, so I'm going to crush this question. When I think of LaSalle, most of my memories are all about friendship. So I have some great friends from LaSalle, and when I think, and we do get together, it was a few weeks ago, a group of us got together for dinner, and we've kept up those relationships over the years. But when I think of that friend group, we weren't the friend group at sophomore year. So that was one of the things I wanted to tell you, like, it changes. You meet new people, and there was someone who I consider my LaSalle friend. I think I met second semester senior year, but became kind of part of this group, and for the last 35, almost 40 years or so, now they're a really good friend. We regularly get together, and I don't say too regularly, but we definitely get together, and we lean on each other. And but more important than just my close friend group, who when my father passed last year, they were the last ones to move away. Oh, there's Claire's LaSalle friends, right? They're always that group, and they've been wonderful support and friendships over the years, but also just other students that I knew at LaSalle that were very nice people. They weren't in my friend group, and I wouldn't have known sophomore year how often you can lean on just folks that you knew. And I was thinking of that driving here today, but in the last 30 plus years, the folks that I've reached out to because they were classmates for one reason or another, and we had spoken about COVID. Well, during COVID, as you can imagine, we, as educators, were getting ready to think, plan, how are we going to teach our students? And there was a classmate of mine, a LaSalle classmate of mine who taught in Florida, and I wasn't great friends with him, but I was Facebook friends with him, so I messaged him because I knew Florida had started 3 or 4 weeks prior to us opening, and so I just wanted to hear how it was going and what the systems and structures they had in place. And immediately, oh, I'll call you tonight, and we had a long conversation. But the same thing happened when, so many different times. There was one time, and it was years ago, and websites were somewhat new, but I was thinking I could code the school district website, which I had no business doing, totally messed it up, and who did I call? Someone that I graduated from LaSalle with, who was a technology director, and said, I just broke my website for the whole district. And he walked me through it, and we got it back running, and no one actually even knew at the time. But it's not someone who is in my close friend group. And so when you think of, the people that you know and that you've gotten to know over the years, even if you're not close friends with them, you will most likely be leaning on each other over the years. And I think in my Northern Rhode Island district, the superintendent in Lincoln is a LaSalle graduate. The superintendent in Burrville is a LaSalle graduate. There's a principal in Smithfield who's a LaSalle graduate. And these are folks that I lean on, and we have something in common, and it happens regularly. So even if you're not the best of friends with someone, you will see them in the future, and it's nice to have that connection and to help someone out when they're in need also.
Thank you, Claire. Sue?
Yeah, I think that was really important how you pointed out that the friends you may have as first years and sophomores may be very different from who your friend group is when you're a senior, because I think that's really true. Like, I'm just reflecting back and coming from Cranston, like all the Cranston kids were friends when we started at LaSalle, and then, over the years we found other people who we felt like we belonged with. And so those are kind of my lifelong friends from LaSalle at this point. And I think that that's important because you want to be open, you want to be kind, and you want to approach everybody like, there's possibility there that you don't know until you get to know that person. I think the other thing that I find important is, again, the reach of LaSalle. So you're coming from so many different districts, but Rhode Island is still small. So even though there are a lot of districts, you're gonna encounter people in different towns. I lived in Smithfield, and then I moved to Westerly, and actually I ended up on this panel because Mrs. Murphy, who was one of my teachers when I was here, my kids swam on a swim team with her grandkids in Westerly. So you are going to find people and find connections randomly throughout the course of your life that link back to here. And so I think, again, that's why when we think about friendships and in our social groups, just like, it sometimes can be hard in the moment to realize that 20 years from now, how you treated somebody in high school may still be the way that they think about you. And so kind of come at your relationships in that perspective that you want to treat everybody with respect and kindness because they're going to be people that you see later. And then the only other thing I would add is this idea of your teachers too, because your teachers are your teachers now. They have a place of a position of authority. But as you grow into your professions, and especially if you go into education, your teachers are going to become your colleagues. You could come back here and teach. You could be in other local districts, and they're going to be your colleagues. And so, I think also this idea of respecting your teachers and really realizing that if you go into that field, they're going to be next to you and probably mentoring you too. And so just be fostering good relationships across the board.
It's true, some of my closest friends here at LaSalle were my teachers once.
Right.
My next door neighbor upstairs was my homeroom teacher sophomore year.
Yeah, it's that idea of different people having different relationships. I was lucky enough to still remain friendly with some of the kids that I coach. They're not kids anymore, actually. Some of them are parents of students currently, and I went to the boys volleyball game on Tuesday night, and I actually sat with 2 of my former players who are older now, and I was much younger when I started coaching, I might want to point out, but So that idea of also, you might still remain friendly with your coach, you might remain friendly with your teachers. They're, you know, folks that you know, as you leave, will really branch out into all sorts of different elements of life. So that idea of, you know, leave a good impression and don't burn any bridges is probably one that you never know when you're going to need a favor or need some advice. So just keep all those doors open.
Whether it's your teammates or your teachers or your best friends, you're building a foundation here for the rest of your life. And that piece of leave to serve, part of it is building that foundation here now. So our last question is, if you could talk to yourself, maybe as a sophomore, or a student at LaSalle, what advice would you give your high school self? Kristen, do you want to start this?
Oh, goodness. Probably, in all honesty, when I was in high school, I'd work a little bit harder. I was kind of here for the good time, you know, I like to have a good time, I like to be with my friends, and the opportunities that I had after college were good, but I think they probably would have been better if I extended myself a little bit more in terms of like scholarship opportunities, because every year counts. And you're not necessarily thinking about that, but college is expensive. And I probably could have done a little bit better in terms of helping out my parents if I'd actually done a little bit better. So, you know, not that I didn't do a bad job, but in reflecting back, I definitely probably could have done a little bit better. And I played sports and I was in clubs and I enjoyed all of that LaSalle had to offer immensely. But I think maybe being a little bit more studious probably would have served me better in the long run in my post-secondary journey.
I think, you know, kind of going back to taking advantages of opportunities and being at LaSalle, there's so many opportunities, and so it's the clubs, or maybe it's a ski trip, or maybe it's, you know, just a sport or a different activity. I think anytime you take advantage of an opportunity that you just learn and you grow, but it also can be an opportunity to be a fan, to be part of something that's bigger than you, just to enjoy your classmates and your teams. So just looking, like taking a breath sometimes and thinking like what opportunities are out there and how can I become more part of this community and make it richer and fuller, and you'll never regret having more experiences.
My advice to my high school self. So I don't remember if I mentioned this, but I said I was a psychologist, but I own a clinic, the New England Center for Anxiety. So right now, I'm going to talk to the maybe 40% of you who are kind of in that other end of the trajectory, and I want to say something about perfectionism. So I think when we talk about what we wish we would have done different, the idea that you can be perfect or you can achieve perfection, you probably all know, you've heard it, it's not something that is achievable, right? And I think in the bigger scheme of the way that I look at it, because we're human and because we're always changing and evolving and growing, what might have been perfect for you yesterday may not be perfect for you today. That's how fast we change, and so you're never going to achieve perfection. And as somebody in education who writes a lot of letters of recommendation for undergrads to get into grad school, never once in my entire career have I ever said, you should let a student into graduate school because they are perfect at this thing. They're perfect in my class. That is not what we say. That is not necessarily what we value. We value, did you show up? We value, how much effort did you put in? We value, how much did you take our feedback and try to improve the quality of your work and learn and grow for yourself? Those are the things that are the important things, not necessarily achieving some level of perfection that once you get there, there's just gonna be another thing to try to achieve, right? So I think that's what I would tell myself, that it really is about the effort and really drilling that in, because one of the things I do know as a clinician is you may not believe it, but the more you tell yourself it, the more you are going to believe it over time. So we're not chasing perfection, we are chasing, did you bring your best effort, and did you approach the world in a way that you gave the best that you could, and you brought your most authentic self, and you just made the day a little bit better, not only for yourself, but the other people around you. And I think that is kind of like just a message to take some of the pressure off of what you might be experiencing, or some of you might be experiencing right now.
Thank you, that's really wonderful advice from our students, from all of you. I think we're gonna open it up for questions now. So Miss N is gonna have the microphone for you. If you have a question, you can raise your hand and she'll come over.
But there has to be a question somewhere.
Thank you all, that was really wonderful, and especially for your great advice during the last question. You started to allude a little bit to some of your favorite memories and favorite times. Do any of you have, a story to share around a particular activity that really helped to make your time here great, but also served as something foundational later on in your life?
Well, I really enjoyed playing sports. I still do. So I think the opportunity to play for LaSalle was one that I cherish still. But also that opportunity of different roles within a team, right? We know that LaSalle athletics are highly competitive. We know there are kids that come out for teams that would probably start in other schools but actually get cut here because of the level of athletics here. So I think whatever your role is, if you happen to make it onto a team, is to actually embrace that role. So the fact that you might not really get into a game, but you might be a practice player, embracing that, because it's those players that make everybody better, right? Or the fact that you might end up being a manager. Or you might end up, for example, in a play, you might not end up in the lead, but you might end up in the cast. Embracing those types of activities that you're able to be a part of, because every part is important. And even though, yes, it's not great to not be chosen for the lead role or to not be starting on a certain day, everybody's participation is really going to get to that end, which is to win or put on a good production or be a member of the musical accompaniment that you might have. So I think recognizing every single role and not to just minimize one, because yes, everyone likes to be the center of attention, at least I do anyway. So everybody likes that sometimes, but I think recognizing that when you're here, you have the opportunity to be a part of something bigger than yourself, and not every person has that. So I think really enjoying that while you're here, because you'll graduate before you know it, and then you'll be on to bigger and better things, no matter where those things are, so.
I think I can ask it without the
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Reed.
So, 4 years ago, teachers and students got thrown into an incredible blender of chaos with the pandemic. What lessons do you think you, as educators, are most proud of having gone through that strange time 4 years ago, and you think is something that we all, or that you as educators, or even what you saw your students do during that time, what's something that you're really happy that you were able to learn and gain from that period from 4 years ago?
I feel like I learned so much during that period. I think as educators, sometimes we have, thick strategic plans and what we're going to do, and we'll map it out, and it takes years, and we had to just turn on a dime, pivot, right? That was the big word, we're gonna pivot to online learning, and we had very little time to do it. And we as educators were able to figure it out in a very short amount of time. And I think that sense of urgency and just seeing how quickly we could move our entire system online taught a good lesson, that it doesn't always take years, that we can do things very quickly in education. The other thing that I think I personally learned being in administration was with COVID came some extra COVID funds, they call them, the ESSER funds, and with those ESSER funds we were able to develop systems and structures of interventions and supports for students. And they were more funds than we typically would have in a given year. And so we really were able to be creative and to be really thoughtful about where our schools were, and then maybe what they missed and what their gaps were, and then how we could help our students. And I feel like we learned quite a bit of how to move students, and sometimes it's learning what to do, and also we're learning what not to do. So we had quite a few initiatives, and some just didn't produce the results we were looking for, and others were spot on. And had we not had those funds, we wouldn't have been able to be as creative. So I feel like that we learned quite a bit about education and teaching and learning.
I agree with that. I think the flexibility that we were able to use in that year, although it was on the fly and we just had to figure it out as we went, I think the flexibility and the problem solving and being able to look at that and be like, okay, so there were a lot of important lessons that we learned there. I think we learned obviously how to adapt curriculum, but we also really honed in on being very people focused and what do our students need in order to thrive. And as a parent who has 2 children with dyslexia, I think the lessons what I've seen in my child's school is the lessons that they learned from that are carrying through. And as a parent, I appreciate that level of flexibility coming out of the schools. So, I hope those are lessons that we continue to be able to say is like, we were able to problem solve this, do things flexibly, and let's continue being as flexible as we can to meet the different needs of all of our students.
Yeah, but I think the students, we saw how resilient students were, right? That, a lot of times the students with the technology was better than the teachers, and how we were able to kind of work together to make certain things work. You all weren't in high school at the time. You were probably in 5th or 6th grade when that happened. So, but if you think about elementary kids and computers, it was a little dicey, So I do think that the resilience of kids during that time, my daughter who's a senior was in the 8th grade. I had the unique opportunity of being in 3 different places and seeing how they did it. So I had a daughter who was here at LaSalle, I had a daughter who was in middle school in a town, and then obviously I worked in Cranston. And to see who did it well, who struggled, I'd say LaSalle did do it particularly well in my opinion. But I do think that kids also made it work too. So the resilience of students, I think, is something that we can't forget either, so.
And how did you survive that?
I can start that one because I'm an English teacher and not a math teacher for a reason. My senior year, Ms. Sangha very lovingly put me in AP Calculus because I begged her to, and it was a huge mistake. And the teacher was incredible, Mrs. McNamara, and this was before people really had cell phones, but every night before a test, she would call my house and ask me if I had any questions. And I would say, I have a million questions, but I really don't think you can do anything to help me. And then, I stuck it out for a semester, and then we talked, and then I switched down to point 1. And it was really difficult, but I felt really supported by all the people who were here and all the teachers.
Well, I think for me, we've already established that I didn't really work overly hard when I was here, so I wouldn't say that I necessarily struggled through a particular class. But I can say that in my house right now, we are living through AP Stats, which is definitely, a challenge. But I think that idea of, not giving up and working hard, staying after class, talking to your friends, maybe doing homework with someone. I think those types of skills, if you want to achieve at a high level, that's the work that you have to put in. And anything that's worth the achievement is worth the work. So nothing in life is easy if you want to put forth that, if you want to get there and you want to put forth that work. So, it's 2nd semester senior year, and we are working away in AP Stats. So, but it's what you have to do. So I definitely say, you have a lot of resources here. So to use those resources to kind of keep on going.
How long did it take you to know exactly what you wanted to do with your life?
Well, so I know for me, when I went to college, I thought I wanted to be a medical doctor. And actually, I was just thinking when I was taking chem, one of the brothers was teaching it, and he wrote on my report card, my grades were erratic. And apparently I didn't know what that word meant, because I went home and I was like, Dad, he said I'm erratic. My dad's like, that's not a good thing, so, right? And so that should have been my first indicator that maybe pre-med wasn't gonna be a great fit. But then when I got to college, I found another major, and it probably was around that sophomore year of college that I really figured out what I wanted to do for my career.
I feel like I took a variety of courses freshman year, like you had recommended. I took an education course, I did well, and I thought, well, I want to take more of these. But it was more of a natural fit for me. But I think what I do now, it was just part of the journey. And I had mentioned my husband was in the military, and so we had moved around, and because of that, I had exposure to a lot of different types of curriculum and standards and grade levels, and that led to myself loving that side of education and becoming a curriculum director. And so I don't think that my sights when I went into education, I knew I wanted to be an administrator, but I think that it just was part of the journey, and hopefully there's more to the journey, so maybe I don't even know what I want to do, right?
Well, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. I actually knew I wanted to be a principal. My grandfather was a principal, I wanted to be a principal, and I've done that. So I was lucky in that I always knew that was the road I wanted to go on, but I'm not going to be redundant in that the path that I took about the different subject areas and how I got to where I was different. But I always knew I wanted to work within education. So I just think it's probably a family thing. My daughter, as I mentioned, is at Providence College, she's studying to be a teacher. So I just think it's just one of those things, I guess.
If you could add like any required class for high school, like one subject that everyone had to take, what would it be and why? Like something that you think is important for like life or something like that.
I would add public speaking, which actually I took second semester senior year as an elective, and I loved it because I don't think that your generation is really great with public speaking. I think we're a little too dependent on our phones, sorry guys. And I do think that if you actually are comfortable speaking in front of people, it actually aids you in life. Because when you're nervous about speaking in front of people, it really can be debilitating. So I definitely think I would recommend public speaking.
That's a great answer. I would add to that financial literacy, some type of financial literacy. I think it's just useful in life, and you'll never regret that you took some, if it's statistics course or financial literacy course.
I would just say too, in addition to public speaking, maybe a theater course, because I think you can get the public speaking, but in a really kind of fun way, and you have a strong theater department, so that would be one that I think would be really cool.
Who would you credit as like your greatest inspiration in life?
It's a big question.
It's a big question. I would have to say my parents. That's the first thing that came to mind. But just having role models and people who are kind and hardworking and part of a community who value education, who sent me to Salle Academy. So for me, it would just have to be my parents.
I would agree.
So assuming you guys were all involved with like some kind of extracurricular, whether it was a sport or something else at LaSalle, what would be your best piece of advice for like time management? Like how did you balance out managing your time between hanging out with friends outside of school and getting your homework done and being in school and also having time for a sport or an extracurricular?
That is such a great question because we want, you to have as many experiences as possible. I think sometimes you don't want to overextend yourself and do what's important to you. But as far as the time management, I felt like, and I still do, the busier I am, the better I am. That it's when I didn't have a lot going on that I would seem to be, behind on assignments. But if I had practice or I had a club or I had a job, I would make sure that I would do it. So personally, the busier I am, I seem to manage time better.
And I think coming up with a system that works for you, because I agree, I played a sport, I worked, I was staying in school full time. So when I was busy, I had to really be organized. So now my system is all my appointments, everything that I need to do is in my phone. If I ever lost my phone, well, it's linked to my computer, it's linked to my laptop. And so like that system might not work for you, but I think coming up with a system that works so that you don't forget things, you don't miss something, especially when you have a game and you're home really late and you might have a test the next day. Well, that's probably not the best time to start studying. You probably should have started studying a couple of days before and reviewing, right? So coming up with a system that works for you would probably be and it takes a while to get there, I'll be honest with you. My system in high school evolved over the years, it's probably not that great. Then I went to college and got better, making use of the syllabus that the teacher gives you at the beginning of the semester and kind of writing those dates down and planning out your semester. And then obviously as you go into an occupation. So coming up with a system that works would be my best advice.
Why did you choose LaSalle?
I chose LaSalle because my father wanted me to go to Bayview, and I didn't want to go there. And also my grandfather went to LaSalle, so it was I was fortunate enough, I went Catholic elementary school, K through 8, and so my parents knew they wanted to continue with the Catholic education. As I said, I did not want to go to Bayview, and LaSalle is now co-ed, so that's how I ended up here.
I would say similar.
Yeah.
My parents mentioned Bayview in my 8th grade.
There's nothing wrong with Bayview, for the record. There's nothing wrong with Bayview.
But also there was so much excitement going on because LaSalle, which was, again, where I grew up around the corner, that it was going co-ed, and there was so much excitement with that, that it just seemed like a great fit.